Now let us have a look to this slide which indicate the method of data collection from where we collect data. Number one, from census is a study that obtain data from every member of the population. The method is not practically because of the cost and time consuming. Number two, sample survey. Sample survey is a study that obtain data from subset of a population in order to estimate population attributes. Experimental study is a controlled study in which the researcher attempts to understand cause and effect relationship. The study is controlled because the researcher can control. Now, how subjects are assigned to group and which treatment each group received. We can consider these two important points. Now, after collecting the sample, we have to say or define what sample mean. Sample is, the word sample means the group of individuals who are actually available for the investigation. For this reason, we have to look for how to collect the samples, and we call it sample technique. Sample technique, it is difficult to study all members of the population because it needs more time and money. So the sample that has been drawn needs to be representative of the population from which it's drawn. Finally, we can say sample technique is the process of selecting a sample of appropriate characteristics and adequate size. Now, what are the sample design? The sample design are: number one, simple random sampling, systematic random sampling, stratified sampling or strata, and finally cluster sampling. So the difference between cluster sampling and stratified sampling: with stratified sampling, the sample includes elements from each stratum. With the cluster sampling, in contrast, the sample include elements only from the sampled cluster. Now let us have a look to more details for the meaning of sampling. The first one is simple random sampling. In this method of sampling, each subject in the population has an equal chance of being included in the sample. There are many ways to obtain a simple random sample. One way would be the lottery method. Each of the number population members is assigned in unique numbers as n. The numbers are placed in a bowl and thoroughly mixed. Then a blind folded researchers select n numbers. Population members having the selected numbers are included in the sample. As regard to systemic random sample, here we create a list of every member of the population from the list. We randomly select the first sample element randomly on the population list. Thereafter, we select the next element on the list to represent the interval, so other elements will be selected at evenly spaced interval till the sample size has been completed. Example, if number 3 is randomly selected, the next element will be 6, which represent the interval, so the number selected will be 3, 6, 9, 11, 15, and 18, etc. As regard to stratified sampling, with stratified sampling, the population is divided into groups based on some characteristics. Then, within each group, a simple random sample is selected. In stratified sampling, the groups are called strata. Example, if we have national survey, we divide the population into groups or strata based on geography to north, south, east, and west. Then within each stratum, we might randomly select the region to the surveyed. As regard to cluster sampling, this method is used when the population forms naturally group or cluster, like villages, children of school, works, etc. Here, first, a sample of clusters is selected using simple random sampling, and then all the units in each of the selected clusters are surveyed. This method is simpler and involves less time and cost. As regard to sample size, it is the number of participants in the sample. The sample size, it is, as we have said, it is the number of participants in the sample. It is an important feature of any practical study in which the goal is to make inference about a population from a sample. A larger sample can yield more accurate results. The sample size should be defined before starting a clinical study so as to avoid bias in interpreting results. If we very few subjects in a study, the result cannot be generalized to the population, as this sample will not represent the size of the target population. Further, the study then may not be able to detect the differences between test groups, making the study unethical. On the other hand, if the study includes more subjects than required, more individuals will be exposed to the risk of intervention, also making the study unethical and waste precious resources, including the researcher's time. Now, what are the errors of sampling? There are two types of errors. that arise in sampling investigations. Number one, the sampling errors which occur due to the sampling process, including faulty sampling design or small size of the sample. Number two, the non-sampling error arises due to coverage error due to non-response of the informant or information, non-cooperation of the informant. B, observational error due to interviewers bias, imperfect experimental technique, interaction of both. C, processing error due to the errors in the statistical analysis.